Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Today I wanted to cover adding Windows print drivers to the VPSX admin console. For queues that I want to deploy to Windows or Linux or Mac workstations, I need to have a driver assigned to the print queue, either Linux, Mac, or Windows. So with a Windows driver, as you can see, I've added a few already. We can see here Mac driver, Linux driver. That would be just a simple PPD file. I have one uploaded. This is easy enough. If you're going to find a PPD file out there from your various vendors, they're pretty easy to come by. You just kind of have to extract the driver packages that they give you. And just as a side note, you're going to want to search through these PPD files for any external URLs or any external calls to programs that are installed on the machine, because if those URLs don't exist or are unconnectable, or if you have software on the machine that's being referenced in these PPD files and that's not there, then obviously it's going to fail. So bottom line, find a PPD file that's very simple, get rid of all the external references. For the Windows drivers, we're going to come over here to the print server area and we're going to hit Windows drivers. Now I have to be on a machine, a client machine, that is the matching architecture for the driver that I'm going to upload. In other words, if I'm going to upload a 32-bit driver, I need to be on a 32-bit machine. And obviously the same with 64. I'm going to want to not do this on the actual server itself. So what I've done is I have downloaded the driver already on my client here, and I've also installed my Windows software that LRS makes called Printer Driver Manager. This PDM client, we call it, needs to be installed on the machine also to be able to add these drivers here. So with PDM already installed, I'm going to hit add. This print helper is my software that we just talked about. It's the plugin for the browser from PDM. We're obviously going to say yes on this. Now what we're going to see is the standard screen that comes up if we're just installing this driver without LRS software involved at all. Here we're going to select the INF for the driver. Again, I've already downloaded this. I'm going to grab the INF here. This is a Rico Universal Print Driver. I'm just going to grab the PCL6 version of this. It's saying it's already in use. That's fine. You would obviously not get that message if there were no drivers installed. I'm going to go with Windows 8 and higher. This would include Windows 10 and up as well. Obviously, if you have Windows 7 clients in your environment, you can click that box. Hopefully, you don't have any of these previous versions. If you get a list of languages in here, obviously you would want to deselect the languages and then only select the languages that apply to you. A lot of driver packages come with English, French, Italian, so on and so forth. Every language that you pick is going to make that driver just a little bit bigger. So we're going to upload this driver here. Check out the progress screen. It's going to take a second. What we're ultimately going to end up with is a driver uploaded to the system, and now it's asking us to configure a version of that driver. So in other words, I can open the printer property page in the driver, and I can say, by default, I want stapling. By default, I want black and white. By default, I want color. Even though I have a couple configurations of this driver, it's still only one driver up in my system. So I'm going to click yes on this. And again, I'm going to see the normal software page that happens with this driver. So I'm going to say next here. I do not ever want to put any kind of IP address or printer name in here. There could be, depending on the driver, there could be references back to this IP address or printer, and we absolutely do not want that ever. Here we have the normal printer features and printer preferences page. We're going to select every feature that we possibly can for this printer. So generally what we want to do is for the driver, we want to have every feature selected. So if we send a print job to a printer that has, say for instance, finishing or stapling option or whatever the case, we want that to just work. We want the output to come out of that printer whether it has those options or not. And what will happen is if we select every option and we print to a printer that doesn't have that option, say for instance staple, it doesn't matter, it'll just print normally. And that's what we're looking for. One driver to address 70+% of our fleet. So in here again, I can go in here, change all my tray settings. I can change my stapling, change everything about this driver, enable everything. Same thing with printing preferences. I'm going to enable color. If I want color default, if I want black and white default, I'm going to select that. We can't completely disable black and white and color through this screen here. We can do that in a different way, but we can't do that in here. This is just the default mode of the driver. So when the user is printing, they could just change the option of the color mode here. So we could say black and white, but then the user, when they print, they could say, well, I really want color, and they could manually change that. But if they don't, they're going to get black and white by default. Obviously, you have all your other settings here. We want to enable everything that we have in our environment. And we're just going to call this default. Again, this is the same driver, just a different configuration of it. So even if we use multiple configurations of this driver, we still say we're only actually using one driver. So if we don't update here, that's fine. We're just going to hit refresh. There we go, it just popped in. So you can see this was for 64-bit. Again, if you want a 32-bit version, you can upload the 32-bit version of this driver. As long as it's the same version, when we go to install on a Windows laptop or desktop or VDI, whatever, we'll automatically select the appropriate architecture for this driver. So if I had the 32-bit version installed here, I would select the 64-bit version for a print queue, and then if it was a 32-bit machine, it would automatically select that 32-bit driver with no issues, no warnings or anything like that. As you can see here, the port is LPR. Now what this is the connection of the desktop back to the LRS server. This is not the connection from the LRS server to the printer. Those two things are separated out now. If we want this to be IPP, I can go to details here and scroll down, and obviously I can change IPP or LPR. We prefer LPR, it's simpler, and IPP does have some issues now and then, but if you wanted to use IPP, there's nothing wrong with that. Generally speaking, if the user has to have visibility into their print jobs that are sitting out there, if they've printed yet or not, you would have to use IPP here. That's bidirectional communication. If you're okay with the users just printing as normal, fire and forget, as we say, that's the LPR or LPD. Now I've uploaded my driver here. I'm going to go back to my printer list. And I'm going to go into admin update, and I can now select my driver. Here's my default that I just uploaded. I can select that and then hit update. Now I can actually add this print queue to my machine. The last thing we want to cover is the separate security rights for driver uploads. We want to click on Print Server and Configure. And under Advanced, we want to go to Advanced Parameters. Here is where we specify the users and the hosts that are allowed to upload drivers. This isn't something that you should give to a lot of different people. This is something that is done very rarely in the LRS software. You generally don't need to update drivers that frequently, so this should definitely not be a lot of people in here. But if you did want to add a few people, you could do user 1 with a space separated, like this. And then the same space separated in your host field. That's it for our driver basics. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.